The movie begins with Winston sitting in a small wooden cabin in Alaska. Suddenly, he hears a noise outside, which makes him anxious. He pulls back the curtain of the window and is shocked to see that animal standing before him. Moments later, two police officers break down the door and storm in to arrest him. Then, an American officer named Madeline arrives and introduces herself. At that moment, we learn that Winston is a fugitive from the police. He also works as an accountant for a corrupt businessman and crime boss named Maury, from whom he embezzled a large sum of money before fleeing. Winston offers Madeline a deal. He is willing to testify against Maury in court, but in return, he demands full protection from the police. Madeline contacts her direct superior, Carol, and informs her about Winston's offer. Carol agrees. The next day, Madeline rents a private plane to take Winston to the nearby city of Inglewood, from where they will travel to the U.S. to hand him over to the authorities. Winston mocks the plane for being small and shabby, but Madeline tells him that it's the only available option at the time. She then straps herself into her seat and waits for the pilot to arrive. Before taking off, she calls Carol to reassure her that they have boarded the plane. Carol instructs her that once they arrive in the U.S., she should take Winston to Seattle. Soon after, the pilot, Daryl, enters. Madeline immediately notices that he talks a lot, so she tells him that she is in a hurry and asks him to take off. As Daryl begins the takeoff, the plane shakes violently. Madeline grows concerned and asks what's happening, but he doesn't hear her. He gestures for her to put on the headset so they can communicate. Once she does, she asks him again, and he assures her that everything is normal and that they will safely reach Seattle. When Daryl asks about Winston's charges, she refuses to answer and tells him not to pry into matters that don't concern him. However, she notices a wound behind Daryl's ear and asks him about it. He explains that he got injured while maintaining the plane. When she inquires about the remaining flight time, he informs her that they will arrive in 75 minutes. A while later, a bird collides with the plane, causing it to shake violently, terrifying Madeline. Winston sits in fear as well, but Daryl reassures them that they are lucky the bird didn't hit the engine. At that moment, Winston notices a piece of paper on the floor. He picks it up and is shocked to discover that it's the real pilot Daryl's license, meaning that the man flying the plane is actually one of Maury's men. Winston tries to get Madeline's attention, but she doesn't notice him as she is still wearing the headset. He then plucks a button from his shirt and throws it at her. When she looks at him, he tells her that he dropped something and needs her to pick it up. Madeline refuses, so he claims he feels sick and might vomit. Daryl hands him a bag to use. At that moment, Madeline notices a bloodstain on Daryl's arm, which raises her suspicions. She also recalls that when he boarded the plane, he already knew their final destination was Seattle, even though she hadn't told him yet. She questions him about it, and Daryl dismisses it as just a lucky guess before quickly changing the subject. He then comments that she resembles his ex-girlfriend and starts chatting about random topics to distract her. However, Madeline insists that she needs to contact air traffic control, stating that it's a security protocol that must be followed. He pretends to attempt communication with air traffic control, then tells her that the mountains have blocked the signal. After some time, Madeline mentions that the aviation community in Alaska is very small, and he must surely know the pilot she flew with 2 days ago, a person named Jackie. Daryl responds that Jackie is a close friend of his. Madeline then surprises him by revealing that Jackie is a woman, not a man. At that moment, Daryl realizes that Madeline has figured him out. As soon as she reaches for her weapon, he attacks her and knocks her unconscious. Daryl then turns to Winston and tells him that Maury is disappointed in him. Feeling terrified, Winston offers Daryl $1 million in exchange for his life. Daryl is taken aback by the amount and asks how much Winston actually stole from Maury. Winston admits that he embezzled millions, but even all that money is nothing compared to Maury's fortune. He also reveals that, for years, he had been sending a monthly bribe of $25,000 to one of Maury's employees. Winston assures Daryl that if he lets him live, he will disappear forever, meaning Maury will never find out that he is no longer a threat. He glances at Daryl, noting that Winston has not given any official statements to the police, which means there is no real danger to Maury either way. However, Daryl rises from his seat and approaches Winston, telling him that he is not the type who can be bought off and that he actually enjoys his job as a hitman. He then adds that he will take pleasure in assaulting Madeline before killing her. Daryl removes his glasses, throws them to the floor, and crushes them. At that moment, Madeline begins to regain consciousness, but pretends to still be unconscious. She quietly reaches in her pocket and pulls out a taser. As Daryl leans in to tie her up, she shocks him, causing him to collapse to the floor, unconscious. Winston, terrified and panicked, watches as Madeline approaches him to calm him down. But suddenly, Daryl regains consciousness and lunges at her. During the struggle, Madeline crashes into the plane's control lever, causing the aircraft to descend rapidly. Despite this, she continues to fight and manages to taste Daryl again, sending him tumbling to the back of the plane. Wasting no time, she quickly grabs the control lever and pulls with all her strength, lifting the plane just in time to prevent a crash. She takes a moment to catch her breath before activating the autopilot. Then, she opens the first aid kit, grabs a pair of scissors, and asks Winston to help free her hands. When Madeline tries to move Daryl, she struggles due to his heavy weight. She has no choice but to untie Winston so he can assist her. Winston suggests that they kill Daryl and get rid of him, but Madeline refuses. They work together to drag and restrain him again. While searching him, Madeline finds a mobile phone, a wad of cash, and photos of Winston's mother's house. Winston panics and insists that they must warn his mother immediately. Madeline reassures him that she will take care of it. She then attempts to contact air traffic control, but the signal is weak and no one responds to her distress call. She keeps repeating the call until, finally, someone picks up. She tells them she needs help because the pilot is unconscious and she has no idea where the plane is headed. The controller begins assisting her, but unfortunately, the connection is suddenly lost. Madeline starts feeling anxious and unsure of what to do. Then, she remembers that the phone she took is connected to a satellite network. She berates herself for not realizing it sooner, then quickly calls Carol and explains the situation. She also informs her that Daryl sabotaged the navigation system to prevent anyone from tracking their location. Carol responds that she will have a pilot reach out to help her. Madeline then urges Carol to send someone to Winston's mother's house immediately, as she is in danger. Carol assures her that she will take care of it and initiate the necessary actions. After ending the call, Madeline sees Daryl regain consciousness and start provoking her. She grabs her gun and aims it at him, but he calmly tells her that if she shoots, the bullet will pass through his body and hit the fuel tank behind him, causing the plane to explode. Left with no choice, Madeline lowers her weapon. Just then, the pilot Carol sent, named Hassan, calls her and begins guiding her step by step. She follows his instructions carefully until the plane stabilizes and moves in the right direction. She then reactivates the autopilot. Hassan tells her that once she sees the coastline, she should contact him again so he can guide her for a safe landing. As she processes everything that has happened, Madeline begins to wonder how Maury found out about their trip to Winston so quickly. Suspicion creeps into her mind. Someone inside the bureau must be leaking information to Maury. At that moment, Carol calls back to inform her that they found the real pilot murdered in his home, brutally tortured before his death. Shocked, Madeline asks who else knew about their mission. Carol responds that the district attorney was aware, as he issued the necessary clearances, and the head of the bureau was also informed. Before Madeline can continue the conversation, she notices a mountain directly ahead. She quickly ends the call, disables the autopilot, and grips the plane's controls to avoid a crash. With immense effort, she manages to lift the plane just in time and clear the mountain safely. Meanwhile, Daryl spots his knife lying on the floor. He discreetly nudges it with his foot, sliding it under his body before anyone notices. Shortly after, the plane collides with an ice formation but remains undamaged. Seizing the moment, Daryl starts a conversation with Madeline, expressing his admiration for her decision not to kill Winston. Winston is taken aback by this remark and turns to Madeline for an explanation. However, she brushes it off, telling him not to worry about it. Daryl, enjoying the tension, continues to provoke her. He tells Winston that Madeline once killed another witness under similar circumstances. Then he shifts the conversation, questioning her about who convinced her to return to fieldwork. This time, Madeline snaps. She rises from her seat and punches him. In the commotion, her glasses fall to the floor. Daryl quickly picks them up, breaks off one of the arms, and discreetly hides it in his hand. Madeline then notices the fear in Winston's eyes. Feeling the need to explain, she finally tells him what happened in the past. She recounts how she was assigned to protect a witness in a critical case, hiding in an old hotel until the trial. One night, the witness asked to shower alone without surveillance. Although it was against protocol, Madeline allowed it out of respect for her privacy. Tragically, a hitman infiltrated the hotel and threw an incendiary grenade at the girl, setting her ablaze until she died. She goes on to explain that she was punished for that mistake and was barred from fieldwork for a long time. As she speaks, she receives another call from Carol, who wants to coordinate Winston's handover. But Madeline interrupts her, stating that there is a mole inside the bureau. The fake pilot had too much inside knowledge for it to be a coincidence. Carol assures her that she will handle it and mentions that she is sending a security team to receive Winston upon arrival. Madeline then asks Carol what Cole, the head of the bureau, thinks about all of this. But Carol tells her that Cole knows nothing because she is the one handling this operation. At that moment, suspicion creeps into Madeline's mind. What if Carol is the mole inside the bureau? Once Madeline finishes her call with Carol, she contacts Cole to tell him the truth. However, his office manager answers and tells her that Cole is on vacation. Madeline insists on speaking with him, explaining that it's a matter of life or death. After a moment, Cole picks up and she tells him that Carol is the spy working for Maury, the gang leader. Cole is shocked by her words and assures her that he will take immediate action, telling her that he's currently at his home in Sinkat and will cut his vacation short to return to the office. After ending the call, Madeline remembers what she overheard while pretending to be unconscious, where Winston had told Daryl that he sends $25,000 a month to someone in Sinkat, the same city where Cole lives. She realizes that Cole is the real spy, not Carol. She quickly calls Carol to apologize and tell her everything, warning her that Cole will send someone to arrest her and advising her to leave the office immediately. At that moment, Madeline sees the coast ahead of her and calls Pilot Hassan, who asks her about the remaining fuel. She tells him, and he confirms that it's enough to reach the airport. However, during this, Daryl manages to use the arm of the glasses he had stolen to free himself, and he lunges at Winston, stabbing him with a knife. He then tries to strangle Madeline with the seatbelt and takes her gun. But Winston, despite his injury, pulls the knife out of his body and cuts the seatbelt, causing Daryl to fall to the ground. Daryl tries to shoot Madeline, but she reacts quickly, using the signal flare gun to shoot him, then hits him with a fire extinguisher on his head, knocking him out. She then uses the fire extinguisher to put out the flames that were about to ignite on his body. Madeline returns to Winston to check on him, giving him a painkiller to help him bear the pain. But in his weakened and fearful state, he asks her to visit his mother after his death and lie to her, telling her that he did good things. Madeline reassures him that he won't die. She then contacts Hassan again to update him on the situation and asks him how to increase the plane's speed to reach the airport faster and save Winston. Hassan warns her that increasing speed will cause the fuel to run out before they reach the airport, but she insists on her decision, and he reluctantly helps her, guiding her on what to do. Later, Madeline contacts Carol to check on her, but she is shocked when Cole answers the phone. Cole tells her that he confirmed Carol was the spy, but unfortunately, she was killed after being hit by a car while leaving the office. Madeline is stunned and accuses him of orchestrating everything. She also tells him that she discovered he's the real spy and that Maury sends him $25,000 a month. But Cole responds confidently, telling her that she won't be able to prove anything against him, then ends the call. Madeline feels guilty for being the cause of Carol's death, but keeps her composure and calls Hassan again, telling him she is getting close to the airport and asking for guidance on how to land. Meanwhile, Daryl regains consciousness once again and manages to free himself from the restraints. He violently attacks Madeline, causing the plane to veer off course. but she pushes him away, shoots him in the leg, then returns to finish her call with Hassan. With great effort, she manages to regain control of the plane and steer it back on course, but suddenly the fuel runs out and the engine stops working. Madeline is filled with fear, but Hassan reassures her, telling her that she no longer needs the engine at this point. She begins executing the landing on the runway, while emergency vehicles rush to the landing site. Suddenly, one of the plane's wheels breaks, causing Madeline to lose control. The plane opens its door, and Daryl falls out directly under the wheels of the approaching emergency vehicles, getting run over and killed instantly. The plane continues sliding down the runway until it comes to a complete stop. Paramedics rush to the plane and immediately take Winston to an ambulance. At that moment, Hassan arrives and congratulates Madeline on her success. But she notices a suspicious man from the paramedic team talking on the phone in a strange way, so she follows him cautiously. She sees him entering the ambulance carrying Winston and notices he is trying to strangle him. Madeline intervenes quickly, shooting him, thus saving Winston at the last moment. Winston thanks her for saving him, and at that moment, she notices the call with Cole is still ongoing. She picks up the phone and hears Cole reprimanding the killer for using a weapon and asking if the mission is complete. At that moment, Madeline realizes that Cole himself has finished the mission, and that's how the film ends. If you love movies and movie recaps, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more. Hit like if you enjoyed the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.